So, we finally got the full unveiling of the Switch's successor, and the presentation was generally really good. It's mostly the stuff we learned after the presentation that's a little teeny tiny itty bitty bit less than good. And I have a lot of thoughts on it, so let's talk, I guess. Just please keep in mind that these are just my opinions and no one has to agree with me here, okay? I, like many others, just have big feelings right now, and I want to scream them into the void. So with that said, let's go. I've been really looking forward to seeing what Nintendo had in store for the new kid on the block, and the Direct got me very hyped. It's just that after the Direct we saw the bits that they probably knew folks would be upset about if they put them in the Direct, and personally, it soured me on the hype a lot. I went from heh to not heh very quickly, really. To start with, the console price. Dang, I wonder why the lower left quadrant is left suspiciously blank in this trailer. They seem to have forgotten something. Surely this wasn't an intentional move by Nintendo for any discernible reason, right? Sitting at a cool $450 USD, it's a pretty hefty investment following the Switch's $300 price point. And hey, I get it. I do. Kinda. This stuff costs money to develop. The tech is better than the original Switch by quite a bit, and inflation means the dollar doesn't go as far as it used to, so I can almost accept the price point, though really I think $400 would have been the ideal. I mean, the OLED model for the Switch is $350, which is still not cheap, and with a lot of the titles announced for Switch 2 so far being upgraded versions of Switch games, with supplemental content in some of them to be fair, there's no hugely urgent need to get the Switch 2 on day one for the lineup, to me at least. To its credit, it does have a lot more under the hood. Look at the stats, the tech, the numbers, the letters, the features. Whoa! Finally, a way to share game footage with other people. Finally, a replacement for We Speak, or needing some stupid app to chat with people in games. No, the other one. Finally, a way to call Octo G123 on a Nintendo system as promised in 2012.
Call me Grandpa.
That makes me uncomfortable.
You better watch your back, Skype. Your days are numbered now. I'm sure all of this means that online play will be a lot better too, right?
Or expand another friend's game screen.
You gotta get a ball.
Okay.
Did you know? The C on the C button stands for Ceases functionality in March 2026. I mean, there's Mario Kart World as a fully new experience, though I gotta say, I'm already struggling with 11 people at a time being better at me than Mario Kart. I don't know what I'm gonna do with 23 people being better than me at Mario Kart. But most of these launch window titles are already available elsewhere, and not just on the OG Switch. Like, wow, I can't believe you can use a mouse to play Civ 7. Absolutely unprecedented stuff, guys. Another wrinkle to this is the price point of the games, specifically the first-party games. $80 is a lot to ask for a base title these days in a world where folks have a lot more options for gaming than they used to. I'll get more to that point in a minute, but for now I'm personally feeling like I'm not willing to get in a giant fistfight with a gaggle of strangers to get a Switch 2 day one. If I miss the pre-order window, I guess I just missed the pre-order window. The higher price of entry for the console and first-party titles just nudges me further from wanting it that soon, personally. And that is a weird thing to say. Not just because I pre-ordered the fucking Wii U, of all things, but also because I camped out for the Switch on launch day in front of Best Buy in 2017, and I have like a million or so 3DS consoles, and if you lined up all the amiibo that I have next to each other in a row, it would probably wrap around the earth at least a few thousand times. Like, being a Nintendo fan has essentially been my only personality trait for 2 decades now, and I'm not gung-ho about the possibility of ruining a kid's first console launch by lining up just before their family and getting the last Switch 2 at the store. That is wild for me to admit to myself, and what's wilder is that the console price isn't even the worst bit to me. Shock and awe, it's the games and their prices that are the most baddest thing to me. Playing devil's advocate for a minute here, so I can justify being big baby mad after that, but again, money isn't worth as much money as it was before. I get that, and I get there are a lot of costs to developing hardware and software alike, and that employees that work on these things deserve a steady, stable income. Anyone would agree with that. Should agree with that, and I'm not going to pretend like I know the ins and outs of costs in the industry behind the scenes, but I do know about being a customer and an end user. I look at some of these upgrades for offer on the Switch 2, and I think, why pay $10 more for Breath of the Wild now than we did on launch day over 8 years ago? And how dare the folks at Nintendo do that and not even include the f***ing DLC for the 8-year-old game? Like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna make people mad as hell at me for this, but I didn't even feel like the DLC was worth $20 in 2017. And in a world where Tears of the Kingdom, a game that already reused so many assets in the overworld map of Breath of the Wild, yet still expanded the gameplay in a million directions and added 2 more layers to the world, even if a little barren and repetitive, but that's another video. If that costs $70 in 2023, why are we making the earlier title in the series cost more to have in full? Unironically, are they stupid? I remember already being kinda, with the idea of DLC in Breath of the Wild when they announced it, which, again, was before the game was even out, though it was an overall nice experience and didn't really feel like it took away from the core game like I'd initially worried it would have because of its early announcement. And I know that specifically, the Master Cycle Zero was a major draw for those skeptical to jump into the DLC hype because, dude, what the hell, this thing slaps. But in a post-Tears of the Kingdom world, I'm not sure a motorcycle to traverse an already twice explored Hyrule holds quite as much appeal as it once might have, you know? Players can build their own vehicles much sooner into the adventure of Tears of the Kingdom, and with a lot more bells and whistles, and with 2 more layers of Hyrule to scout out. So call me a hater if you must. It just feels like opting out of making this re-release almost a decade later, the full package, and at a higher price, is big lame. And like, Oblivion Remastered just came out too, so, I mean, granted they're pulling the shit with the horse armor again, but at least the base version of the remaster comes with expansions included, Nintendo, so honestly to me, Tears of the Kingdom being $70 in 2023 was rough enough, and I didn't want to support that kind of price hike for one game, so I spoke with my wallet. I abstained. And I got the collector's edition instead. You know, like a good little pay piggy. And it seems like Nintendo learned from that people will pay what they set as the price for a hyped product, even if it's not the industry standard. Pre-orders for the Switch 2 online have been a virtual bloodbath. I mean, even Masahiro Sakurai had to rely on the lottery system in Japan to order one. Masahiro Sakurai, the Smash Brothers guy, the Kirby guy, the Kid Icarus Uprising guy. Why wasn't he guaranteed one of these things as an employment perk? He's literally directing Kirby Air Riders and he doesn't even have one? But worry not, friends, at least Nintendo is looking out for us. If being such a lowly peasant makes the Switch 2 unaffordable for you, Nintendo of America's CEO has a solution for you. You see, Doug Bowser says they're going to ensure that the original Switch is readily available too. So if you're too unlucky or too pleb to get a pre-order for the Switch 2, at least you'll be able to buy an original Switch. I mean, I guess it's an almost in-season April Fool's joke.
Do you guys not have phones? Yeah.
But like, come on, Doug Bowser, who exactly is your target audience for new Switch sales for folks who aren't already looking at a Switch 2? Because I'm pretty sure the people most interested in a Switch 2 are part of the 150 million people that already own a Switch. So I'm not entirely sure what your let them eat cake angle is here. Thanks for the $10 tech demo also, by the way. That's a cool, entirely necessary separate purchase. As if there was the worry that people were going to brick the eShop trying to download it all at once on launch day. As if social media won't do its thing and let one person just tell the world what the control intricacies are, which will spread for free, by the way. As if someone isn't going to have a 100% speedrun of the thing played on, I don't know, the Dreamcast Samba de Amigo controllers by end of day, June 5th anyway, negating the need for its existence as a paid download entirely? Doug Bowser? Doug Wario. Anyways, so now with the Switch 2 hype being absolutely intolerable for many, we're looking at a cool $70 to $80 starting point for games that have existed for years, with a little extra on top, or a cheeky 10 or 20 bucks for the privilege of an upgrade on select titles. Plus tax. Plus whatever the world's got going on right now, probably also affecting things. I don't know, it changes every few minutes. I can't imagine it'll end up in the consumer's favor, though. Update, because I've dragged my feet, the new amiibo are now no longer just expensive, they are stupid expensive. I know that this isn't entirely Nintendo's fault, but they did make the starting price point pretty high, so they're like, kinda sorta at fault for this one. I can't lie. And it is just so unappealing to me, as a consumer and a collector both. Yeah, the physical media costs money to produce. I know. But knowing the option to buy physical is there, but like, you know, kind of bad? It just kind of stings my collectory heart. And I know that some game upgrades come with more than just performance upgrades. Kirby and the Forgotten Land, for example, gets an expansion in Star-Crossed World, but as a physical media loving animal, I see the $80 price point for the full physical version of the game, and I cringe a little. A lottle. Which is just one of the most painful things I've ever said in my entire life. Nintendo has me hesitant to buying a Kirby game, and not just a Kirby game, but a Kirby game with more Elflin in it. The bestest, most cutest, most adorablest little buddy in the whole entire Omniverse, my love and my life and my light. I'm holding back on buying the game because simultaneously, physical game ownership is so important to me, but it's not an additional $80 important to me. Not even for sweet baby Elflin. How'd they fumble a sale on more Elflin? And I'm just about the easiest sell ever. I can justify buying a game more than one time like it is a full-time job in most circumstances, but I can't justify this. Not in the world where Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and X both got Switch remasters with epilogue stories added for $60 a pop. Not in a world where Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition put the Wii U's content, the 3DS's expansion, and the combined DLCs for both onto one cart for $60. Not in a world where games like Witcher 3 and Persona 5 Royale with all their bells and whistles are all on one cart for like $40 or $30 if you catch a good sale. Now for ports, is Switch necessarily the best system to play these games? Objectively, no. Far from it, truthfully, but it's the principle of the matter. It's that you can presently own the physicals for Switch, is my point. Now, I'm gonna ramble here a bit, but I promise I'm going somewhere with this, so bear with me. Admittedly, I might have a problem, and just know that a lot of these were bought on sale or at secondhand shops, okay? But I love physical games. I love owning my games. I love holding my games. I love the security in my games being mine and not on some cloud at risk of the whimsy of the corporations that hold the licensing. I love the clicks and the clacks of putting games into consoles and then the games being on the consoles when I put them in. I love the little manual booklets some games still come with that make the ride home from the store that much more fun as the excitement builds up for my new game. I love the pre-seasoned flavors they put on the Switch cart specifically. It keeps me from buying a lot of used games because, like, what if someone's already savored all the flavors on the cart? You're guaranteeing yourself more new game sales by making all the carts lickable and stuff, Nintendo. Why take that market away from yourself, Nintendo? I do my best to get as many of my games physical as possible. Even indie games that are cheaper to get as downloads and that go on sale a lot on the eShop or Steam. Even DLC. If it's available on a physical cart, that's even better. And hell, I even have some games I haven't opened yet. Just being able to have them is enough for my monkey brain. I can make a lot of excuses to accrue more physical games than I can ever play. I super love that on Switch, there's no regional restrictions, so depending on where I am in the world at the time, I can pick up a physical version and just play it. Studying abroad in Japan when games like Mario Maker 2, Fire Emblem Three Houses, and Animal Crossing New Horizons came out, and not being kept from owning physical copies of those games because of that was the reason I bought those games at all when I did, as well as being able to just pick up and play games I'd heard great things about, but used, and just fill out my library in ways I hadn't otherwise planned while abroad. Wait, not that one, no wait. The upcoming Fantasy Life I is only getting a physical release in Japan, so I ordered my copy on AmiAmi because I want the physical release. I'm willing to wait the extra forever of time to get that physical copy in the mail, even after there's sizzle reel footage in the March Nintendo Direct. Like, really? The best footage we could show of online play for our one shot at 4 seconds of Nintendo Direct promotion is a set of PNGs?
Okay.
Anyways, physical media. Not just collector's editions, but my good golly gosh, do I love getting extra things with my thing. Art books and CDs are pretty common and not as interesting, but sometimes you get extra goodies like pins or replicas, or if you're really, really lucky, entire card games based on the game you just bought that you have no one in real life to play with. A reminder of your long-lost social life and inability to maintain friendships like the animal you are, me. It's half a collector thing and half a preservation thing to me. Like, yes, as established, I love having and holding objects I don't need, but more than that, if I've paid for something, I want to own it and to access it, no strings attached. I don't want it to come with the added risk of coming and going on the whims of corporations or whatever. I wouldn't buy a blender without a blade attachment, waiting for it to come separately, subject to disintegrate if I don't pay for my Blender Pro subscription someday or whatever. Or like maybe the company just decides that it's time to stop letting these old blenders work and they remotely jam all their functions. Maybe this isn't as good of an analogy as I'd hoped, but you get it, right? Please? Please? It's what's always bugged me about downloadable games and DLC, especially as a subscription service. Downloadable games and DLC expansions aren't something that's generally given a tangible physical way to access them until later releases. Oopsie doodles on that one Breath of the Wild Nintendo Switch 2 edition for Nintendo Switch 2, but the limitation to being a downloadable thing makes it transient. I am macho. Yes, this is a way to make a lot of games a lot more accessible to a lot more people, and yes, it can cause lower costs for devs and consumers alike. I get that. I appreciate that. But what happens if companies just change their mind on what's accessible? Streaming services do this kind of thing regularly, cutting out content that was previously available and throwing them in the vault, or, if the suits desire, chopping them into piecemeal access. About a year and a half ago, Sony threatened to remove one-time purchased content from people's accounts with a month's warning and no refunds. Until they didn't, but they were willing to do it. More recently, in October 2024, Steam added the warning to players making purchases that the purchase is for a license, and not for a game as a product. Now, it seems like this was always in the fine print, but you'll forgive the average person seeing words like purchase and buy for digital titles, often at the same price point as physical ones at release, and then thinking that this means the same as buying a physical game in that you own it. It's like if you bought a book, but were always at the risk of a corporation incinerating that book remotely on your bookshelf someday. Just recently, Ubisoft's insistence in a court of law that digital purchases are just for licenses to access their games and not product ownership just further cements this feeling in my gut that physical is the way that it has to be. And now, I'm just some idiot on the internet, so I can't say with 100% certainty that anything is or is not the intention, but in my opinion, it feels like there's more and more planned obsolescence of products that aren't infinitely profitable. Games with online functionality falling into the ether of inaccessibility, and further than that, games that just cease to be available for ownership or use, period. And it's not like Nintendo was free of sin here either. The Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection wasn't just a limited physical release, it was a limited digital one too. Like what, did you have to inflate sales numbers from the pressure of an arbitrary time limit to get the game because you weren't confident in selling a Mario game? And yes, I'm an asshole and part of the problem, I bought the game, but again, it's physical media. It was always going to be worth that $60 price point to me, so I grabbed one. Sue me. Please don't sue me. It's just another case of a company removing a digital product or service without need, and that wasn't even the only Mario 35th anniversary celebration to get that treatment either. But it's not just for Mario's birthday. Oh, no. For the 30th anniversary of Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, there was also an extremely arbitrarily limited time purchase. A digital version of the NES game, localized officially for the first time if you don't count the DS remake with a lot more thought and effort put into it, was available for 4 short months. Again, for no real reason. Oh, hey look, another in-season April Fool's joke. And there was even a collector's edition. For reasons. Like, if they wanted to sell a cool collectible, they didn't need to pretend to care about the game too, but whatever, I digress. And in a way, they've maintained this practice in the Switch Online membership. Sure, there are libraries like the NES and Game Boy ones with titles you can play at any time, and if you subscribe to the expansion pass, you get even more goodies in the Game Boy Advance and Nintendo 64, to name a few. That, and many DLCs that would normally retail for $20 a pop are included in the annual subscription that's $20 more overall to access. This will also apply to many Switch 2 upgrades, so people on the expansion pass won't even need to pay the extra fees for these upgrades. So it saves the end user from having to spend extra for additional content, which makes it a bargain, right? Well, in theory, sure, but in practice, the second you stop paying for your online subscription, you lose access both to the libraries of those retro games and the DLC expansions included in the membership, making it so you need to renew your subscription to access everything, or spend $20 in chunks to get the DLC you care about the most and could have already played piecemeal. And you'll have to forgive me for being all doom and gloom here, but if the 3DS and Wii U are anything to learn from, once online services are gone, they're just gone. I just don't have a lot of faith in Nintendo 10 years down the line saying, sure, guys, you can just keep your access to these retro game libraries and DLCs that were part of your subscription. The way I see it, it's not impossible or even unlikely that once Switch services go offline, even if you paid for the expansion pass, you may still need to pay to keep those DLCs for games like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and Animal Crossing, or those Switch 2 upgrades like those for Zelda titles or for Kirby. I could be wrong, and I would love to be wrong. But corporations have never necessarily been the customer's friend, and the Switch 2 version is not all being free unless you continue to pay the upmarked subscription fees to Daddy Nintendo year over year. It just doesn't give me the confidence that the content you don't technically own will suddenly be something that you do own at the end of the Switch 2's life cycle. Don't get me wrong, Nintendo finally giving folks a way to access legacy titles that cost at least a couple kidneys to own legally, physically is good, but they're kind of being held ransom unless you continue to pay the luxury fee to access them. It just doesn't sit right with me, and you'll have to forgive me for giving it the side eye. My favorite corporation is acting too corporate right now, and I don't like it! The 3DS and Wii U eShops being shuttered in 2023 barred a lot of great titles from people to purchase, download, or own, or have the license to or whatever permanently. Not to mention breaking other titles from large swaths of functionality. The original Splatoon and Mario Maker titles, for example, example. The original Splatoon and Mario Maker titles, for example, no longer have major features supported. You can boot them up, but you can't access the library of 80 gajillion stages made by other players, and you can't play the version of Splatoon with the second screen in your hand, letting you use the touchscreen to properly place your inky airstrikes on the enemy. But even further than that, there's a library of games that were only available on the eShop that currently can't be purchased and enjoyed through legitimate means anywhere else. The clever puzzlers of the charming Pushmo series, the varied Kirby minigames, one of which became its own full title later on, the 3D classics, which held a lot of their appeal in the extra dimension that really only the 3DS could give them, to be fair, the creative bursts of unique mini-titles in the Guild series of games from Level 5 that are eternally underrated and overlooked, Picross 3D Round 2 and Rhythm Heaven Mega Mix in the US. I could go on, but in the interest of getting this video out, I hope that covers it. So why am I rambling about this kind of thing? Well, it's because of game keycards now being a thing. You know those games for sale where it's like a disc and then a 3 million hour download to get the actual game that should have been on the disc? Or worse, just plastic boxes with download codes in them, as if that counts as owning a physical game? Well, the next step in this seems to be game keycards, which are little plastic game carts that don't actually have the games on them, which just makes them plastic carts in a false dream, really. According to Nintendo, instead of buying these games and, having them, you get the privilege of having an arbitrary hurdle placed in front of you that requires the physical keycard in order to not only download your purchase, but access it later. Which makes it objectively worse than just downloading it, because even with that data on your system on your new microSD EX card proudly displaying a Mario logo you'll never see, though at least they're not overcharging for the cosmetics this time, the sneaky pricks, you cannot play it without the key card. So why even buy it if it's just going to be a roadblock to you? Plus, it's not like games are getting smaller in size for download either. 256 Great Britons of data storage won't last very long in modern day, and again, those micro SD EX cards are not cheap, so if you're not really saving on money or time or storage downloading with game keycards, you're just giving yourself an extra step to access downloaded games. I guess this system technically allows for you to sell the game keycard later, since it won't be tied to your Nintendo account or whatever.
This is how you share your games on PS4.
Thanks.
But I mean, as a physical media and general stuff collector, I'd like to avoid parting with the things that I collect when I can, you know? I know it's a luxury and that I'm very privileged to be able to collect the things that I do, and I know that there is a lot more important stuff to worry about in the modern day, but that's not the point of this video. The point is that game key cards are too transient for my liking. And for emphasis, it's not like games can't still fit on these carts. Only some of these games will be on keycards. Take, for example, No Sleep for Konami Date. I've played both Somnium Files titles that are out now, and both fit on Switch 1 carts just fine. Hell, this game is also getting released on a Switch 1 cart. So it's really disappointing to see the Switch 2 version as a game keycard. Like, looking at the trailers and knowing what I and Aini were both like, so much of the game will be made up of already existing assets that already, again, fit on Switch carts. So that's the version I plan to get. Again, it's my preference and I'll cry if I want to. I concede that a big part of this is likely the cost of the Switch 2 cart, since the tech is like big fancy now. I concede that physical media is also not forever for any number of reasons. Stuff wears down, replacement parts run out, I know that. I concede that this has been a practice before as well. Games that aren't complete on purchase without download are much more common these days, and some games are sold with a code in a box. I know all of that. But counterpoint, me, personally, in my opinion, as just one person, I don't want to buy a physical game that isn't a physical game. That's really all it comes down to. If a game is download only or download required, I'm personally going to be a lot more hesitant to jump in, is all I'm saying. And it's important to emphasize that digital games aren't the enemy either. I have a lot of downloaded games and content too. I know why that asterisk that you're buying a license and not a game exists on Steam now. I know why Steam is a fantastic asset to gamers and why PC gaming is the behemoth that it is. I know that the option to let smaller companies and indie developers have a way to platform and sell their games to a larger audience is integral to their successes. I know that digital distribution is cheaper for developers and can allow for those tasty Steam sale prices to fill up your digital library with all those games you're definitely going to get around to. You've been meaning to play them and it's only $7, so now that it's in your library, you'll definitely get around to it. There's no reason not to, you just gotta get through the backlog first and...
You're just like me. Trash!
Options are not a bad thing. Accessibility is never a bad thing. And this just feels like the start of the removal of an option, a precursor to a digital-only era of games. and I don't like it. That and the $70 to $80 price tag as the default for first-party Nintendo games is not something I'd like to see become the baseline standard. If it works in Nintendo's favor as much as pre-orders for the console seem to suggest, then perhaps that's just the inevitable future we're going to have to accept. But in that potential inevitable future, I hope Nintendo and other game companies keep in mind just what $70 or $80 means to the average person these days. Especially when, if you play without purchasing skins or whatever, games like Fortnite are free. I hope they realize it risks turning a lot of people off from purchase because of rising costs of everything, including things that are way more critical to your day-to-day. These big games are a lot easier to pass on a purchase for and a lot harder to justify when they jump up an extra third of the price. As a day one 3DS owner, I remember the fallout from the price being a negative factor for people, despite the tech in the thing being substantially more intricate than the incredibly well-selling DS family, and the 40% price slash that came within the first few months of the console's lifespan as a result of that fallout. I remember the financial hit Nintendo took from the Wii U, a major fall from grace with a console substantially more powerful than its predecessor, the Wii, with its unprecedented success in global cultural impact and praise. Living through the height of the Wii and DS's strongholds on game markets to see the Wii U's eternal flop and the 3DS's very rough start was, as a Nintendo fan, very surreal. I then remember Nintendo of Japan's upper management taking pretty substantial pay cuts to ensure employee morale stayed high and to negate the need to cut any positions within the company. Telling that, to see those kinds of compensation slashes to the top brass being able to keep the rest of the company going is normal, but that's a topic that could use its own video. And I look at the Switch too. Following on the heels of the incredible success of the Switch, kitted out with the same hybrid gimmick as its predecessor, but filled to bursting with technological advancements and the price point that it's at, and I wonder is all what post-launch will look like, what the first year will look like. We're in a much different world today than we were in the early 2010s. Gaming has changed, certainly, but there are other global aspects that have changed that might make aspects of electronics as a whole impossible to reduce prices on without selling them at a loss. I can appreciate that. The situation feels like every 5 minutes it's different with tariffs and AI and all the rest of that goodness. It's turbulent. And people's priorities may change. People's ability to engage with hobbies as they always have may change. Or I could just be a major pessimist. My point is this. In an uncertain world, where the uncertainty of the future of a lot of things, physical media included, is ever-changing, the certainty of a full product I own in my hands, not in a cloud or as a download or whatever, is something I feel is worth fighting to preserve wherever possible. Anyways, thanks for listening to me ramble and rant and rave a whole bunch. As I said, I'm a physical stuff collector, and I'd like to hear thoughts from both physical and digital game people in the comments. I am very well aware that there will be a lot of people who disagree with me, and I welcome that kind of discussion too. I agree that digital preservation is inevitably probably the best way to forever preserve media of all kinds, yar har fiddle-dee-dee and all that, but I hope I've made my thoughts clear on the merits and importance of physical media ownership today. Let me know what you think. I love having talks in the comments. As always, stay safe, stay happy, stay well. See you in the next one. Bye. Really, the biggest point in Mario Kart World's favor right now for me is the inclusion of the Moo Moo Meadows cow. Just look at her, she's so happy to be here. I love her so much, she's the most precious thing. I hope she stays safe and happy in her racing endeavors forever and for always. If anything ever happened to her, I don't think I could ever emotionally recover from it.